A full moon shines bright over the wilderness of South Yorkshire.
A young nun, breathless from crossing moor, watches in terror.
A man she once trusted is on the turn, and not for the better.
This is One from the Vaults.
Join us as we discuss a film so mortifying that nobody's bothered to watch it in 70 years.
Our advice? Keep big light on.
I don't think that was the right use of mortifying.
Good evening all and welcome.
Welcome all, and good evening.
All good and evening welcome. You're listening to Warren here.
My name's Rufus.
And I'm Clint. And together, we are the still breathing, unaided members of the Sinema Society.
That's cinema spelt with an S, as in sin.
For we are film fanatics of the sinister, the wicked, the noir.
And abbreviated with the SS.
No.
It's not on purpose.
We are the faithful cinephiles who have dedicated our lives to uncovering the macabre movies of the long-lost Anvil Studios.
Now, if you're under the age of 50 and prefer to socialise with other humans, it's unlikely you'll have heard of this historic little film company.
But Anvil is remembered by some as a paragon of inexpensive British thriller flicks that frequented backstreet picture houses in the early mid to later mid 20th century.
In this podcast, we will bring to you, dear listeners, all that we have unearthed about each of the many missing titles in Anvil's back catalogue.
Every episode shall focus on a different film.
Looking into everything from its plot to production,
Script to score.
And any behind-the-scenes rumours of ritualistic sacrifice.
So, welcome to our first foray into the arsenal of Anvil.
For our premiere podcast, we present to you Wolfman
of Doncaster.
Doncaster.
I thought foray was an eel.
No, that's amore.
I thought that was when the moon hits your eye like a bit... Okay, forget it, run the clip.
Here in the wild hills of the grim north, something terrible lurks in the shadows.
Quiet, missus. 'Tis no need to fear. I is only the local barn pot, out for an evening's flashing in the woods.
Forgive me. I thought you were a monster.
Hey, by go! Monsters don't exist, you daft lass.
Then what was that dreadful howl?
Just a normal wolf. Let's go.
But here, not all families are what they seem.
The Levitt family have owned these lands for centuries, but at a terrible cost.
May I ask what that cost is?
You may.
What the cost is it?
I'm not telling you.
What curse afflicts the heart of historic Doncaster? What ultimate peril do the residents of West Riding's sixth largest market town dare not discuss? And just what is that infernal sound of horror?
Believe me, I'm not much company when the moon comes out.
Wolfman of Doncaster. From Anvil Studios comes a new tale of terror, guaranteed to pin you to your seat.
You have just witnessed with your ears the original trailer for our film de jour.
Like all Anvil pictures, there is very little actual footage for Wolfman of Doncaster, or indeed any evidence it was ever produced at all.
Such is the legacy of Anvil.
But after literally a week of research, we can reveal all there is to know.
Released in 1950, Wolfman was a definitive stomp in the direction of all-out horror for the relatively new studio.
Until this point, Anvil had merely dipped its fetid yellow toe in the black lagoon of terror, instead attempting to cultivate a reputation for thrillers that were cheap to make but very Moorish to a simple-minded audience.
A bit like the modern televised talent competition.
That's right, cheap slop for brain-dead scum.
With a string of intriguing titles such as Murder Me a Little, The Clock Struck Death, and The Lady Who Cried, Give Over, Will You? Anvil had established itself as a passable purveyor of pastime entertainment.
But with the advent of their werewolf opus, things were about to get very hairy.
Oh, I see what you did there. Very nice.
Yes, what an excellent turn of phrase, Rufus.
I know, I were proud of it and all.
The success of Wolfman of Doncaster was unprecedented for Anvil.
With the film being shown in over 17 cinemas across Britain and almost one in Wales to crowds of about 26 to 36 people per screening.
The modest little studio in Acton, West London, had never broken such numbers.
This trailblazing picture led to a decade of monster movies, creature features, and prosthetic nightmares. Literally, in the case of their 1957 spine tingler, The Prosthetic Nightmare. Anvil Studios would never be the same again.
But what strange circumstances led to the creation of this game-changing flick?
What disturbing coincidences ushered in this new dawn for the studio?
Why Doncaster? What is Wolf? And who the frig is Malcolm Gordon?
Such questions and more might be answered after this little bit of ambient music. We're back.
The real-life tale behind Wolfman begins with a chance encounter. Producer Leslie Stride was a frequent late-evening rambler of North London's more forested heaths. In unpublished memoirs, Mr. Stride recounts one night strolling through Hampstead by the light of a full moon, when he came upon a rather hairy gentleman in the bracken. The man in question was shirtless and appeared to be wrestling with another, much younger man over some undisclosed disagreement.
According to Leslie, he naturally felt the need to intervene and, in his own words, quickly beat off the hairy assailant. Stride then introduced himself to the younger man wiping himself down, who turned out to be none other than aspiring playwright Ernest Flack.
Ernie grew up on a cinematic diet of silver screen scares from across the pond. And with his career in avant-garde nudist theatre going nowhere, the writer was soon penning the first draft of a monstrous screenplay for his new associate.
Thus, the dastardly villains of Anvil took on a new supernatural slant.
Stride wrote himself that he was keen to present a man in turmoil with his own savage nocturnal instincts. We could only ponder as to why this idea was so prevalent in his mind.
The executives, however, were in need of some convincing.
The bigwigs of the day were reluctant to fund a film they considered a lowbrow furry screamfest, as one unimaginative honcho referred to the proposed picture.
For the benefit of listeners, Warren did in fact use the air quote hand gesture when reciting the words lowbrow furry screamfest. And I just did the same.
Flack's original title was A Wolf in Paris, and was purportedly the tale of a forbidden romance between a bishop of Notre Dame and a gypsy who just happens to be cursed with lycanthropy.
Which we believe is the Latin for werewolfism, though that is unsubstantiated.
Producer Leslie Stride argued the film could be shot by reusing sets already built for upcoming productions. These included Parisian streets and sewers from Murder at the Moulin Rouge and church interiors from Hell's Bells.
But them who held the purse strings were having none of it.
Yet Mr. Stride was not about to take it lying down or even sitting, not even in a favourite armchair, perhaps the purple velour piece he purloined from the set of Enter the Queen. He was going to make this film regardless, even if it killed him.
Excellent foreshadowing, Warren.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Stride privately began to scout potential directors and actors for his project by leaving copies of the script in various bathhouses throughout the city.
First to be cast was the leading lady Patricia Akehurst, who was considered ideal for the role by virtue of her being the most readily available at the time.
A regional rep theatre girl, Miss Akehurst was new to London and very keen.
By now, the role had undergone its very own transformation, and the gypsy girl had been converted to a nun in the guise of Sister Christa Valiente.
A continental Christian pilgrim of vague origins. Unfortunately, Miss Akehurst clearly struggled to mask her thick East Midlands twang in her performance.
As we can hear in this brief audio clip from the final cut of the movie, recovered from a tape found in a tumble dryer in Lytham St Anne's in 1987.
Give it a little listen and see if you can spot her accent slip in this scene.
But, my dear sister Christa, have you not yet made the acquaintance of the beguiling Baronet Levitt?
Sister? You are related, I take it?
Not even slightly, Creighton. Christa here is a sister of the Order of Our Blessed Lady of...
Why, you have travelled very far.
Well,
Is more than 40 hours by horse.
and even longer by stag, which we all know are native to...
Have you been to England before, sister?
I've never set foot in this ancient country in my life.
Did you catch it?
You may have noted this scene also features the booming vocal talents of Henry Stout as the mostly expositional role of Reverend Reed.
Believe it or do not believe it, Mr. Stout had never previously worked as an actor.
He was, in fact, a lifelong street preacher.
Stride discovered Henry on the corner of Tottenham Court Road, standing on a crate yelling nylon is a hell garment and cheese is the meat of Satan.
But the real star of the picture show is actor and brutalist poet Kurt Bellamy.
Known to at least a dozen literary drunks as the Beast of the East End.
Making him the perfect fit for the role of tortured soul Creighton Levitt.
Mr. Bellamy was infamous amongst the post-war Cockney poets for his lively, humorous and often crude verse compositions, which he recited in exchange for whiskey at various taverns across Limehouse and Mile End.
Which is where he crossed paths with fellow struggling writer Ernest Flack.
A natural showman, Kurt was intrigued by Flack's feature and asked for a part on the condition his payment came entirely in the form of single malt scotch.
As a poet in the oral tradition, which is not as rude as it may sound, the work of Kurt Bellamy is primarily dead and forgotten. Yet in the vast, vast archives of the National Library of Unremarkable Men, we discovered a recording of a live recital given by Bellamy himself at the Crawford School for Decent Boys in 1948.
Right, listen up then, boys. This one's called Fish Finger Supper. Fish fingers up, Barry landlady cry, as she buxomly enters with great heaving pie. Bends right over, can't believe me eye. So close I can smell it's her fish finger pie. I blows on her hand, brings it close to me mouth. She stands all a quiver, a trembling south. Next thing I did was clearly uncouth, but slobbered all over a fish finger pie. My tongue full of seafood, my hands deep in batter. A taste so profound, there's no washing with water. Like eels and liquor, but something twice fatter. But not done was I with the landlady's pie. She lay on the floor, all gasping and panting. My jaw just ached. It was like I'd been ranting. The flavour in all London, of which I'd been hunting. To Old Bull and Bush and save a landlady's pie. Thank you very much.
A charming ode to good customer relations there.
We hope.
As a result of Bellamy's incendiary performances, his public recitals were banned in any place west of St. Clement's, earning him the less favourable nickname of the Bell End of St. Clement's.
With such dire prospects, Kurt agreed to the film immediately, and with all roles confirmed, covert shooting began within 2 hours of him signing the contract.
Regardless of the fact that Bellamy had been drinking for 3 hours prior.
And there was little time for multiple takes, as, despite an immediate start, the production was somehow already a month behind schedule.
Producer Leslie Stride, or Long Les as he's referred to by some colleagues,
For reasons we can only speculate on,
was a man under great pressure, pulling every trick he could muster to make his monster movie in secret before the executives learnt what he was up to.
In order to justify putting the likes of Bellamy on Anvil's books, Stride foisted the man into a number of minor roles in other legitimised pictures.
Such was the cut-and-thrust nature of early mid to late mid-century filmmaking. Anvil were churning out over 20 films a year. So aside from his star turn in Wolfman, Bellamy appeared in 5 other shoots in a single week.
His co-star Patricia, who was herself posing as a tea lady during production, recalls witnessing Bellamy violently tear strips of carefully matted costume fur off his forehead as he sprinted from one set to another. He put her in mind of an athlete or an uncle who's overdone the barley wine at a Christmas sneeze up.
They don't make actors like that anymore.
I'm not sure they make barley wine anymore.
Bellamy would go from footman to farmhand to manhandler, all in a day's work.
In one image taken from a dinner scene in the day Dame Dolores danced herself to death, Bellamy is still clearly wearing his hairy hands as he serves prop veg to guests at table.
The triumph of Wolfman led to many more monster roles for the leading man.
Over the next few years, Kurt Bellamy became the fierce, furry face of Anvil.
Starring in such beastly B-movies as He Howls at Night,
Slave unto the Moon,
A rather nasty growler.
each transformative role more challenging than the last. Bellamy himself confessed he was more glue and dog hair than man by 1954.
Little wonder, therefore, that upon completion of his final feature with Anvil that year, A Crispy Devil, the actor promptly purchased a narrowboat and motored it straight down the Thames estuary and into the choppy waters of the North Sea.
We know very little of Kurt Bellamy's life after that, other than this urgently tapped Morse code message sent from an abandoned rig near Doggerland. Dash dash, dot dash, dot dash dot dot, dash dot dash dot, dash dash dash, dot dash, dot dot, dash dash. There's no way of truly knowing what that means.
And as per the initial agreement, with each role he undertook, Kurt received yet more whiskey, meaning scenes shot later in the day could prove troublesome.
Which could explain his ropey performance from the climax of Wolfman.
If you pay close attention, you'll notice Bellamy refers to both actors by their real names and the sound of what we think is him chucking up on the sly.
It was you, Crichton. I saw you kill those people.
Don't you point that gun at me, Pat.
Get back. I have this gun.
And bullets of purest silver. Do it, sister. Shoot him.
Oh, no, don't. It was the beast inside me. Oh, here it comes. Oh, Christ.
See how he raves. Krista, end the madness.
Shoot him! It's his fault! It's him, Henry! I mean, what? I'm impotent!
Innocent? Innocent? He's never been innocent!
Oh, bugger off, it's Reverend Reed! It's him who you must kill!
According to Internet Tittle Tattle, Wolfman is the first time the name Malcolm Gordon appears in the credits of an Anvil production, under the title Consultant.
Little is known of Gordon's credentials prior to this, but he quickly became the studio's most valuable asset, with records showing his fee equated to 3 shillings per hour. This amounts to more than 14 grand a day in modern money.
We think. I mean, none of us can count.
This page from Stride's memoirs describes his first encounter with the strange Mr. Gordon in the midst of the most testing filming of his career.
And Rufus is going to read it out, as we consider him the most dramatic.
He's even been on the telly.
It was only the news.
Somebody stole his nan.
Please get on with it.
Another fruitless day. I fear Project Wolfman shall never reach fruition. If only the board could see my fruitiness. And yet my fortunes may be on the up. Slipped into the sailor's knot for a bitter lemon and was joined at my usual fireside spot by a most enigmatic gentleman. Name? Malcolm Gordon. Never met anyone with such strange manner. His sallow skin was milk white, purple eyes set back in his skull behind pince-nez specs, nearly bald but for thin yellow hair along the sides. Not my type at all, but offered to buy drinks for the night and listen to my woes. Within the hour, he had proffered his services as a consultant. For some reason, I cannot recall Gordon's reasoning for wanting to come on board. His conditions are equally peculiar but harmless. I am desperate. Mr. Gordon is my saviour. With any luck, his involvement may just bring about my wildest desires and make my monster picture a success. For now, I simply must sleep and dream on this golden future now within my grasp.
We cannot say what Mr. Gordon contributed to the tenuous production, yet within 1 week, Wolfman was completed on time, under budget, and overacted.
The finished film was screened to Anvil's executives, who had an inexplicably unanimous change of heart about the whole movie and began distribution.
And so the wolvish whodunit, or should we say who is it, became a smash hit, and Leslie Stride enjoyed the triumph for a brief while.
1 month after its release, the producer was found dead at his home in Crouch End.
His broken neck was reportedly due to a tragic fall down the stairs, which was odd, as Mr. Stride lived in a bungalow.
But with this one flick, Long Les had at least secured the new legacy of Anvil.
Now, when we announced on the Film Fans Forum website that our focus this week would be Wolfman of Doncaster, the response was overwhelming.
Yes, almost 5 people messaged us to ask about the film's sordid creation.
And while we simply cannot be frigged to answer them all, we narrowed your queries down to 3 we believed most relevant.
I was pushing for 4 questions.
Yes, but you're a dynamo, Rufus. You don't sleep at night.
I do.
No, you don't. We've shared a sleeping bag. It's a long blink at best.
Can we just get to the questions, please?
Our first question is from Bill Boyles, a carpenter and exotic animal burner in Bridge North. And he asks, what would possess a person to visit Doncaster, even for a bag of nails, let alone film a film in it?
A very valid question. Thank you, Clint.
I didn't write it.
The reasoning behind Doncaster appears to be twofold. First, the astonishingly agreeable locals who allowed the crew to demolish most of the town's social housing. This was then replaced with historic wooden facsimiles the director felt was more in keeping with the rustic aesthetic of the film.
The Doncastrians were not recompensed for this wanton destruction, but were content enough to merely have the phrase, "Come to Doncaster, please," flash up occasionally during quieter moments of the film's runtime.
Secondly, Stride had booked an independent camera crew to film all the exterior shots on the quiet. But happenstance meant they were unable to reach London by train on their only available weekend in the midst of shooting an early social realist film, Isn't It Awful, Joan?, in nearby Sheffield.
Doncaster became the only mutually accessible and amenable location. The actors were swiftly sent up north in the back of a meat truck, and every scene was filmed and wrapped within 37 hours.
This last-minute relocation from France to Yorkshire meant dramatic rewrites for Ernest Flack, who was forced to drop an entire cheese subplot from the script. Despite their best efforts, some references to this earlier premise escape the edit, as we can tell from this brief sound clip found on a floppy disk rescued from the belly of a manta ray off the Gulf of Mexico in 1997.
Come here, the remote, Krista. What see you down there in the valley?
Why, the cattle.
But of course. Like all the eye can see from here, those animals belong to us. They eat our grass, we eat their flesh, they give us their milk, we make it into cheese. Wheel upon wheel of brie, camembert, cantal, delicieux fromage that is devoured in every bistro in the land.
Of Doncaster.
Washed down with a carafe of Chateauneuf de Pape, much like a scene from Voltaire, or perhaps the deeper reaches of Dumas. Yes, mademoiselle. Would you care for a Gauloise?
Question 2 is from Marie Cleabang, full-time pen writer of Runcorn. I've never bloody heard of this so-called film. Where can I watch it?
Another good question. Thank you, Clint.
They're not my questions.
Sadly, the massive unexplained fire that destroyed Anvil Studios in 1968 burnt all reels of every film. This included Wolfman of Doncaster. But just last year, a large cache of previously lost Anvil movies were reportedly discovered, sewn into a medieval tapestry in County Durham, which greatly excited fans.
Well, just us.
With the prospect of Anvil launching its own streaming service of their flicks.
In the manner of Disney Plus, etc.
We here at the Cinema Society even spitballed a few names for such a service.
Things like Anvil Plus.
And that's it.
However, it soon became clear none of these films were original Anvil classics.
The poor design of this new streaming platform meant it quickly became a receptacle for illegitimate porn parodies, and the entire thing was shut down.
A crying shame it was too. I myself spent many hours watching film after film after film before I realised these were very clearly pornographic spoofs.
Indeed. Had I paid closer attention, it would have been obvious I was watching a cheap, smutty imitation. But I failed to clock the alarming title was, in fact, The Wolfman of Doncaster.
You have to admire their ingenuity, really. And I did. Several times.
Right. So, sorry, Marie, but nowhere to watch it yet. And question 3 comes from another female, anonymous, location unspecified, and it's, does anybody know what became of Malcolm Gordon?
A third fantastic question. Well done, Clint.
They're not my frigging questions!
Now, what's interesting is that the name Malcolm Gordon does recur in the credits of many Anvil pictures under that same title of consultant.
But the man himself remains a mystery. As to what happened to Mr. Gordon following the fire of '68, there's no authoritative record, but we did receive a direct Twitter message from a blank profile containing a phone number for Malcolm Gordon's granddaughter.
If you too would like to slide into our DMs anonymously, then please do follow us at Cinema Society. And please note that it is cinema with an S.
Easy enough to remember. We are the SF.
No. Anyway, we thought we would give this hot tip our own follow.
We rang the phone number to try and reach this so-called granddaughter, and luckily for you lot, we recorded the whole shebang.
Hello, Miss Gordon. This is Rufus from the Cinema Society. No doubt you've heard of us. We were looking to ask you a couple of questions about your grandfather.
And there we have it.
So that's it for our first blood-curdling saunter into Anvil's fascinating past.
Join us next week as we pluck another cobweb tome from the proverbial library, as we discuss Lust for Blood, the 1958 vampire flick that cemented the studio's grotesque reputation slightly to the left of the heart of the British horror establishment.
Until then, I've been Warren.
I'm being Rufus.
And I always will be Clint.
We are the Cinema Society.
Or the SS.
Would you give it a rest?
And this has been One
from the
vaults.
One from the Vaults is a co-production between the Cinema Society and Medium Rare Productions. It was written and performed by Joel Heritage, Jacob Lovick, and Jack Robertson, with additional performances by Joe Bellum, Alice Marshall, and Katie Patterson, and edited by Jacob Lovick. The music is by Cyclone Marlowe. You can follow us on @CinemaSociety on Twitter, email us on cinemasociety@gmail.com, and remember, cinema is always spelt with an S.